If a row of a square matrix, if a row of a square matrix A is 0, that is, A has a row consisting of all zeros, then A is not invertible. This could be justified later when you come to the concept of determinant also, because if there is a row consisting of all zeros, we can see that the determinant value is 0, and whenever the determinant value is 0, the matrix is not invertible. You might be familiar with that idea, but right now we don't know what is determinant. Okay, right now we don't know what is determinant. We just have to use the previous proposition to justify this result. That is, if a matrix has a square matrix is given to us, if that matrix has a row of zeros, there is a row consisting of all zeros, then it cannot have inverse. You cannot find a matrix B which satisfies A into B equal to B into A equal to identity. We'll do this. Or I'll write let A be an n by n matrix. We'll mention the order. Let A be an n by n matrix with the 0 row. Assume that there is one row which is 0 with the 0 row. Then if you look at the row echelon form, okay, matrix A may not be in the row echelon form, but if you reduce it to the row echelon form, what happens? Remember, already A has a row of zeros. When you try reducing the matrix to the row echelon form, you only apply row operations, right? You apply row operations. So whatever row operation you apply, that 0 row will remain as 0 row itself. And you usually see that the 0 row is to the bottom side of the matrix. You always try to see that the 0 rows are all below as per the definition of row echelon matrix. But what we can conclude at this point is then the row echelon form, I'll call it as A dash, form A dash of A also contains a 0 row. Contains a 0 row, or you can write a row of zeros. Okay, either you say a 0 row, or you can say that a row of zeros. How do we know this? Because when you compute A dash starting from a matrix A, you can interchange rows, two rows, you can multiply a row with some scalar, non-zero scalar, or you can multiply some row with the scalar and add it to another row. Whatever row operation you apply, any of these three types, that row which was 0 in the matrix A will remain as 0 row itself, but you can change its position. If it was in the say second position, you can bring it to the nth position if a matrix is of order n by n. That could be done, but A dash will also have a 0 row. When you say that there is a row of zeros, or equivalently, this square matrix A is a square matrix, right? You are saying that there is one row which is a 0 row. That says the number of pivots cannot be n. Number of pivots will be either n minus 1 or less, because already there is one row without a pivot, since it is a 0 row. So the total number of pivots will be less than or equal to n minus 1. So you get at least one column in A dash having no pivot. In A dash, there is at least one column which has no pivot. And whenever a column A dash has no pivot, what does that tell you? You can look at the statement 1 of the first proposition. Statement 1 of the first proposition is equivalent to statement 3, right? Statement 1 and statement 3 are equivalent to each other. A can be reduced to identity according to the first statement. That is, the row echelon form of A is identity if and only if, according to 3, if I say that 1 and 3 are equivalent from the previous proposition, that says row echelon form of a matrix is identity if and only if the matrix is invertible. Now here this A dash which we got, is it invertible? Is it identity? Can it be identity? This
No.
A dash which we got? No, why? Because it has a row of zeros. When there is a row of zeros, it's understood that there is at least one row without a pivot. So there is at least one column without a pivot. So you cannot have integer 1 present in all the diagonal places. Or in other words, A dash is not identity. I'll write here. Then what did we write? The row echelon form of A also contains a 0 row. Therefore, A dash is not equal to identity. This implies A is not invertible by using 1 implies 3 of the above proposition. Okay, by 1 implies 3 of the above proposition, this has A has no invertible. A is not invertible. Because if at all it is invertible, what should happen? A dash should be identity. Since A dash is not identity, statement 1 should imply statement 3. Or I'll write if and only. Okay. By using 1 if and only if 3 of the 1 if and only 3 of the above proposition. Because you are using 3 implies 1. Suppose A is invertible, A dash should have been identity. So you're not using 1 implies 3, you're using 3 implies 1, correct? To conclude A is not invertible, I have to use 3 implies 1. So to be on the safer side, I'll write 1 if and only if 3. Both implications are true according to the previous proposition. So by the statements 1 and 3, we get this. A is not invertible. Since if A is invertible, A dash should have been identity, but A dash is not identity. So this concludes one corollary. We'll go to the other corollary. So keep this in mind, whenever your matrix has a row of zeros, it is not invertible. The next corollary, this gives you a method to compute the inverse. Okay, this gives you a method for computing the inverse. Let A be an invertible matrix. So it's invertible that is given to us. A be an invertible matrix. So this corollary doesn't justify whether a matrix is invertible. You should know that the matrix is invertible. Then you're trying to find out what is that inverse. So finding out inverse could be done using this corollary. To compute A inverse, we apply elementary row operations on A. Okay, elementary row operations on A. What happens if I apply elementary row operations on A? Since it is given to be invertible, what should be the row echelon form? Again, according to 3 if and only if 1, or 3 implies 1.
Identity.
It should be identity. Equivalence of first and the third statement says that whenever we know a matrix is invertible, its row echelon form has to be identity. Statement 1 says A can be reduced to the identity matrix. We apply elementary row operations on A, reducing it in the sense A, reducing it to the identity matrix. Reducing it to identity matrix. Now, how are we going to compute inverse? The same sequence of operations, those row operations, same sequence of operations applied on identity, applied on I. Since I have not specified the order of A here in the question, I'll not write IN. I could have written let A be an n by n. I think that would be better. Let A be an n by n invertible matrix, I'll write, so that I can write here the same sequence of operations applied on IN yields in the sense gives A inverse. We'll try understanding what does this corollary mean. So what is given to us? A is invertible is given to us. Making use of the statements 1 and 3, what we'll do is we will apply row operations on the given matrix A, which will reduce it to identity. The same set of operations in the same order, okay, same sequence of row operations, exactly the same sequence of row operations which you applied on the matrix A, you apply them on the identity matrix of the same order. Okay, same row operations when applied on the identity matrix, that will give you the inverse. Okay, this is how you compute the inverse of the matrix. This is an easy observation using, again, the previous proposition itself. Let A be an n by n invertible matrix. Then what do we know? By 3 implies 1 of the above proposition, what we can find? We can apply row operations, finite number of row operations on the matrix A, which will reduce it to identity. But we have noted much earlier that applying elementary row operations on a matrix A is equivalent to multiplying the given matrix on the left side by the respective elementary matrix. There are 3 types of elementary row operations, so as there are 3 types of elementary matrices. Applying each of the elementary row operation on a given matrix is equivalent to multiplying it on the left side by a suitable elementary matrix of the same type. Okay, that's how we have related the two concepts earlier. Therefore, by 3 implies 1 of the above proposition. Now, I will not write elementary row operations. I'll look at in terms of elementary matrices. There exist elementary matrices. What should be the order? Since A is of order n by n, elementary matrices will also be of order n by n. There exist n by n, I'll write. There exist n by n elementary matrices. E1, E2, etc. Say some k number of them. Ek, such that when do we have k elementary matrices? If we have applied k number of operations on A in order to bring it to the identity matrix, then there will be exactly k elementary matrices, such that when you multiply them in the same order, if first row operation is applied, I have to multiply on the left by E1, and then E2, etc., Ek, it should result in the row echelon matrix, but we know what is row echelon matrix according to 3 implies 1, it is identity. So applying row operations on A is equivalent to multiplying on the left side by the respective elementary matrices. That's what we have written here. Now look at what is given to us as a hypothesis. A is invertible. As A inverse exists, multiplying on either side by of this equation, okay, of the above equation by A inverse, we get, I'll write in the next slide. What do we get here? If I multiply by A inverse. So what's the equation we had? Ek minus 1, etc. E2, E1 into A equal to identity we had. I'm multiplying on the right side here, okay, on the right side of both LHS and RHS from the right, multiply by A inverse. That is, A into A inverse, this product becomes identity. So Ek minus 1, etc. E2, E1 into identity, I'll write here because this is needed for us. What is identity into A inverse? What is identity into A inverse? Diksha. Diksha, what is identity multiplied with A inverse? With any matrix? Shreya, can you answer that? What is identity into A inverse?
A inverse.
Yeah, identity multiplied with any matrix, whatever that matrix is, it should give back the same. It acts like an identity element in a group. So you will get A inverse. Carefully look at this equation, all of you. What does that tell you? What were those E1, E2, etc., Ek minus 1, Ek? Those were the elementary matrices corresponding to the elementary row operations which you have applied on the matrix A in order to reduce it to identity, in order to bring it to the row echelon form, which is identity. How do we know the row echelon form is identity? Because A is invertible. and it follows from 3 implies 1. So these were the row operations applied on A. Now the last equation which I have written in the box is the same elementary matrices when multiplied on the left of identity matrix. There is identity here. You're multiplying on the left by E1, by E2, etc. in the same order as you have applied on A. What is it giving you? It is giving you the inverse of A. Therefore, the same set of elementary matrices multiplied on the left of identity in the same order. I'll mention that in the same order. Yields the inverse of A. The last equation which I have written in the box exactly says that A inverse is nothing but on the identity of the same order, you apply exactly the same operations. So this is corollary 2, the second corollary all about. This we'll verify using one example. You can do this with any matrix, okay? If at all you are asked to find out the inverse, it's a very basic problem. Later, once you know the definition of adjoint of a matrix and determinant, you can directly use that formula. But if at this moment you forget about what is determinant and adjoint, I don't know whether you all remember. If any of you remember the definition of adjoint at all. Now, using this result, we can easily compute what is the inverse. Determine, we'll solve this problem. Determine the inverse of A. I'll give you the matrix. When I give this question, since I've asked you to compute the inverse, I should see that the matrix which I give is invertible, remember? And if you remember exactly what is the formula of determinant, your determinant comes out to be 3 into 2 minus 4 into 1, which is 6 minus 4 is 2, which is not 0. So inverse should exist. Now, how are we going to compute the inverse? I have to apply a set of row operations on this matrix A and try to reduce it to the identity matrix. Reducing to identity matrix is possible because the row echelon form of this matrix has to be identity. Remember, according to the theorem, for matrix is invertible, its row echelon form has to be identity. So by applying row operations, I can reduce the matrix A to identity. You have to apply exactly the same operations in the same order on I2, identity of order 1001. When you apply all the row operations in the same order on identity, the final matrix that you get, that is going to be the inverse. So we will not double the work. What does it have to do? I have to apply a set of row operations on given matrix A, reduce it to identity. Then I have to apply the same set of operations on identity, and that will give us inverse. What we'll do is, we will start with the matrix which has two blocks. Okay, and our first block is going to be the matrix A. This is the trick we'll use here. You take the first block as A and the second block as identity. Now your work is simple. You had to do the work twice. I'm doing it in one single step. What we'll do? Now you have to reduce this first block to identity. That is your A. So in order to reduce the first block 3, 1, 4, 2 to identity, whichever row operation you are going to apply the same set of row operations on the second block, which is nothing but identity. So which operation will go for first? Anyone? Some suggestions? Remember, I have to bring down to the identity matrix.
R2 minus R1.
R2 minus R1 is safer always. Okay. If you try with some complicated operations, it's always, you may complicate the process. Row echelon is the method to simplify the matrix. You should always see that you use less number of row operations, because you can come up with any other idea and finally come to identity. But then you should always see that you don't complicate the method. As she said, if I go for R2 minus R1, 4 minus 3 will become 1, right? So I'll get the first pivot here, and then I can exchange the second row with the first row, just to see that the pivot is in the first position. R2 minus R1, First row will remain as it is in both the blocks. Remember, for both the blocks, I have to apply the same operation. What happens to the second row here? 4 minus 3 will give you 1. 2 minus 1 gives you 1. I have to apply the same operation on the second block also. R2 minus R1 gives you minus 1. Here, 0 minus 1 is minus 1. 1 minus 0 is 1. What next? Either I can exchange these first and then subtract, R. I have to reduce this 3 to 0 because 1 will come to the first position, that becomes a pivot entry below that. I'll do that. We will go in pace with that proposition, okay, where you had given a method to bring the matrix to the row echelon form. I'll use exactly the same set of operations. So I will interchange this so that the pivot comes in the first position. 1, 1, 3, 1. I have interchanged R1 and R2. I have to do the same with the second block. 1, 0. Sorry, 1, it's minus 1, 1 it should be. I'm interchanging the rows here. Minus 1, 1, 1, 0. Okay, this is 0. What next? I have to reduce this 3 to 0. So what shall we do? Shatina, can you give me the next? Shatina, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. What is the operation after here?
3R1 minus R2.
I have to apply the operation on R2. So the change should happen in R2. So R2 minus.
R2 minus 3R1.
Yeah. It should not be the other way. Okay. It is not 3R1 minus R2. R2 minus 3R1. Because if you, whichever row you write first, that will get changed to new matrix. So we are going for R2 minus 3R1. First row is already 1, 0, is it? No, it is 1, 1. Okay. I have to change the slide, so please help me out with this. It is 1, 1. This will be 0, I think. What happens to the other entry? 1 minus 3 times R1. 1 minus 3 times 1. So I'll get minus 2, right? This would be minus 2. What is the other block? First row will remain as it is. Minus 1, 1. If there is any mistake, please let me know. And then second row, what we have to do? R2 minus 3R1, as she said. So 1 minus 3 times minus 1. That gives us 4. Here 4. And the entry here was 0. So 0 minus 3 is minus 3. Is this fine? Okay. So next. What shall we do next? We can make this entry minus 2 to 1, the second row's pivot. I have to multiply by minus 1 by 2 to the second row. Minus 1 by 2 into R2. 1, 1, 0, 1, minus 1, 1. This becomes 2. No, minus 2 when you divide by minus 2. And then minus 3 by minus 2 becomes 3 by 2. And now remember, the first block should be identity, or we know that the entries above the pivot must be zeros. So I have to go for R1 minus R2 again. 1 minus 0 is 1. 1 minus 1 is 0. Here this block is as it is. Second row as it is. First row minus 1 plus 2. Whether the signs are all right? I hope I have not done any mistake here. Is it all right? All the matrices are fine, is it? 1 minus. Okay, we'll check. Now what happens? The second row as it is, minus 1 plus 2. I would get 1. Then 1 minus 3 by 2. 1 minus 3 by 2 is, what is it? Minus half? The one which I computed yesterday, I got some other answer. I don't know. No, I think this is right. So, okay, this is the matrix. Did anyone get the same matrix?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, then it should be correct. I think I had taken some other matrix, I guess. So, according to the corollary, what should be the inverse of the matrix now? Look at this. You started with A and you started with identity. That is I2. Finally, A has been reduced to identity, correct? The first block has been transformed to identity. The second block should give you the inverse. So I'll immediately write A inverse is equal to 1 minus 1 by 2 minus 2, 3 by 2. What is the method to cross check whether this is the inverse of A or not? You just multiply this matrix either on the left or right of A. Okay. This is just to verify whether it's the inverse or not. What was the matrix which I had taken? 3, 1, 4, 2, 3, 1, 4, 2. This was the matrix. Multiply this with the final matrix which we got. Check whether you get identity here. If you get this, then your answer is right. If you don't get identity here, then what computation I've done should be wrong. Okay. So this should give you identity. This should give you the inverse. So when the first block A has been changed to identity, the second block, which was identity earlier, has been changed to A inverse. How do we know that? By the corollary itself. What I've written here, the same set of row operations applied on identity will give you A inverse. Okay? This is about corollary 2. I'll erase these links, ink marks. One more proposition. Just now I said that if you have to cross check whether that matrix finally you got A inverse is the inverse of A or not, I said you just multiply A either on the left or on the right by whatever final answer you got, which is A inverse. Then check whether you get the product as identity, correct? I didn't say that you check it both the ways. You don't have to check A into A inverse is identity as well as A inverse into A is also identity. I didn't tell you to verify both. I said one of them is enough. But what exactly the definition of invertible matrix says? An n by n matrix A is said to be invertible if there exists another matrix B, say n by n of order itself, such that A into B equal to B into A should be identity, right? Both the ways it should satisfy that the product comes out to be identity. Then how do we know only one way is sufficient? Now this proposition justifies that. Okay, this proposition is all about that. Let A be a square matrix. Let A be a square matrix which has either a left inverse or a right inverse. So only one of the condition is given to us. What do we mean by left inverse? There is another matrix B such that B into A. When you multiply that B on the left side of A, it is giving you identity. That is the meaning of saying B is the left inverse of A. You call some matrix B to be the right inverse of A if A into B comes out to be identity. That is, you are multiplying on the right of A by B. So one of them is given to us. Then we prove that even in that case, A is going to be invertible and its inverse will be B itself. Let A be a square matrix which has either a left or a right inverse. Should I mention that? Maybe here that is B A equal to identity, or here A B equal to identity. Just for your reference, what is the meaning of saying left or right inverse? Then A is invertible. Then A is invertible and B is its inverse. I guess we have verified earlier as a small result that if a matrix has an inverse, it's always unique. I hope I have done that. If A has an inverse, say B, then it is unique. I think we have taken B and B dash to be the inverses, and then we proved B and B dash must be same. I think we have done that. So this proposition says it's enough if you can get a matrix B of the same order, which either acts as a left inverse of A or right inverse of A. You don't have to verify both the products. Remember, matrix multiplication is not commutative in general. Okay, generally for two matrices A and B, A into B and B into A may not be equal. But in case of invertible matrices, if at all you are able to get one matrix B which satisfies B into A is equal to identity, you don't have to check with the other one whether A into B is identity. It will happen. It will happen for sure. That is what we are going to justify. Okay. As done in the book, Arton's book, I'll do one of them. The other one will follow from the previous discussion itself. You just have to interchange the roles of A and B. That's all. Let A be an n by n matrix which has a right inverse. I'll assume it has a right inverse. Right inverse, say B. I'll call that right inverse as B. That is, what does that mean? There is another matrix B of the order n itself such that A into B is identity. This is the assumption. What we have to justify? A is invertible. According to definition, when do we say matrix is invertible? There should exist a matrix which multiplied on either side of A should give you identity. And in this proposition, we are also going to justify that the same matrix B, which is either left inverse or right inverse, itself acts as the inverse. So what needs to be verified here is that you just try proving B into A also happens to be identity. Okay, try justifying B into A is also identity. A into B identity is already given to us. If you prove that B into A is also identity, that says A is invertible and A inverse is B itself. Okay, so our aim is to prove B into A is identity. That is, B is the left inverse of A, which is that is what we have to justify. B is given to be the right inverse of A. We have to justify B is also the left inverse. Okay. Now let A dash denote the row echelon form of A. A dash denote the row echelon form of A. How do we arrive at the row echelon form from a matrix A? By applying elementary row operations. And as we know, applying elementary row operations is equivalent to multiplying A on the left side by suitable elementary matrices. Then there exist elementary matrices. Then there exist elementary matrices. Let me call them as E1, E2. I'll not take K of them. I'll take some R of them. The number need not be same in all the results. I'll take, say there are some some R number of elementary matrices. What should be the order? Since A is of order n by n, these will also be of order n by n. If needed, you can mention. Even otherwise, it's understood that they are of the same order as that of A. Elementary matrices such that when they are multiplied on the left side of A, what do we get? We get A dash. Now you cannot write A dash is identity. Remember, we have to prove that A is invertible. Only when we know that A is invertible, I know the row echelon form is identity. Right now, we don't know what is the row echelon form. I have denoted it by A dash, so I'll write A dash here. But what we know is, applying row operations on A, you can always reduce A to A dash, which is row echelon form. And applying row operations is equal to multiplying on the left by elementary matrices. This equation is useful to us. I'll write it down once again because I'm coming to another slide. Otherwise, I have to go back all the time. This is equal to A dash. This is the equation we have with us. I'll number that as 1. Matrix equation 1. We will prove that A dash cannot have a row of zeros. Just think of a row echelon matrix which is square. I think this has come in our previous propositions discussion also. A square row echelon matrix. Okay, a square row echelon matrix. You look at a row echelon matrix, you know the definition of a row echelon matrix. The first non-zero entry is always 1, and entries below the pivot are zeros, above the pivot are zeros. Pivot of the next row is to the right of a pivot in the previous row, and if there is a row of zeros, and all the rows below that must also be zeros. Okay. So if you have a row echelon matrix, okay, take a matrix which is in the row echelon form, and I'm taking it to be square. What do we mean by square? Its order is say some n by n. Then this has only two possibilities. Either it should have its last row 0. When I say last row 0, the previous rows could also be 0. Okay. It is not that only the last row should be 0. It can have 2 or more 0 rows. But when I say the matrix in the row echelon form has a 0 row somewhere, the definition of row echelon form says that if there is a 0 row, all rows below that are zeros. So definitely, if there is a row of zeros, the last row has to be 0. Whether there is 1 0 row or 100 0 rows, last row has to be 0 according to the definition of row echelon form. So when you are in the square matrix, which is in the row echelon form, either it should have its last row 0 or it should be identity. Okay, there are only two possibilities. Just analyze this once again. This we have come across in our previous proposition also. If it is identity, we are through. Okay. If it is not identity, try justifying its last row has to be 0. So whenever you have a square row echelon matrix, it will definitely have a 0 row, last row, or it is identity. These are the only two possibilities. We will try justifying the A dash what we have in equation 1 here with us has to be identity. If it is not identity, what is the other possibility? According to what I've written here, it should have a last row 0. Having last row 0 will give us some contradiction. That's what we are going to justify now. What happens if the last row of A dash is 0? Okay, you'll see what happens if the last row of A dash is 0. We will multiply matrix equation 1 on either side, but from the right. Okay, from the right, that is here I have to multiply, here I have to multiply, from the right by B, the matrix B. What is B? B is the matrix which is the right inverse of A. Remember, we have taken B to be the right inverse of A. So equation 1 I have to multiply. These will remain as they are. E2, E1, A into B, that's equal to A dash into B. What is A into B? A into B is identity. A into B is identity. A dash into B will remain as it is. Identity I can omit writing. So this is also same as ER, ER minus 1, etc. E2, E1, that's equal to A dash into B. You see here, we got A dash into B as a product of elementary matrices. Elementary matrices are invertible. And product of invertible matrices is also invertible. What does that tell us? The product A dash into B, is an invertible matrix. Whenever a matrix is invertible, as we noted in corollary 1, it cannot have a row of zeros, right? A matrix having a row of zeros cannot have an inverse, according to, I think, the first corollary which we justified today. It cannot have inverse. But here, A dash into B is a product of elementary matrices. That says A dash into B is invertible. This says A dash into B is invertible. Therefore, A dash into B cannot have a row of zeros, because once it has a row of zeros, it will not be invertible, but it is invertible being the product of elementary matrices, so it cannot have a row of zeros. Therefore, or this implies A dash cannot have its last row 0. A dash, remember, A dash is a square matrix. Because A is a square matrix, A dash also has the same order. And a square row echelon matrix, I said it is always either identity or has its last row 0. Because if A dash has its last row 0, if A dash has its last row 0, okay, you multiply on the right side by any other matrix, that matrix will also have last row 0. This you can verify. How do we multiply two matrices? How to get the first row of the product? You have to multiply first row of A dash with each column of B. That gives you the first row. How do you get the second row? Multiply the second row of A dash with every column of B. That gives you second row. How do you get last row? Multiply the last row of A dash with every column of B. It gives you last row. If last row of A dash is 0, when that row is multiplied with every column of B, last row of A dash into B also becomes 0. But you are saying A dash B is invertible, so it cannot have a row of zeros. Therefore, the matrix A dash also cannot have a row of zeros. It cannot have a row of zeros, so it cannot have its last row also 0. So the only possibility is, therefore, A dash must be a square echelon matrix, has only two options. It must be identity. It must be identity, which implies A is invertible. Whenever the row echelon form is identity, A is invertible, and equation 1 gives you what? Not equation 1, I think I can number this as equation 2. Not that, this one I'll number as 2, okay? Just work with this if you have written down whatever I've discussed so far. Here, you take A dash as identity, okay? When you take A dash as identity, you get B as the product of elementary matrices. This product comes out to be B. Then you substitute this here. I guess I have to, no, here. In equation 1, see, first this you take as 2, equation 2. In equation 2, you substitute A dash equal to identity. You will get B as the product of EJs. Then you substitute that in equation 1. A dash you get identity. This product is B. So combining equation 1 and 2, what you should be able to get is B into A is identity. Okay, try getting this, combining those equations 1 and 2. If you are able to do that, then our work is done, because already we have AB equal to identity. We also get BA equal to identity. Therefore, A inverse is B itself. Okay, conclusion we'll do tomorrow. Please try completing that.